So thank you everyone for coming to hear us speak today. I'm Nick Kirby from Mishcon de Reya, and I split my time between being a commercial property lawyer and changing the way we deliver legal services using technology. Our strategy is to deliver services faster, better, more efficiently. And I think everyone would acknowledge that real estate transactions need transformation. Consumers are frustrated with how slow transactions take to complete and how many of them fall over. And I think planning, the sort of lack of comprehensive planning information slows transactions down. The fragmented nature of planning policy slows down development. And so collaboration in planning is obviously really important in helping change the way transactions are carried out. But in the course of preparing for this preparation, we realized it's bigger than that. It's the whole real estate life cycle needs an injection of collaboration to help transactions work better and faster. There's huge pressure from government, regulators, consumers to change the way that property is bought and sold. And so today, we wanted to be a bit more ambitious about what we were talking about, and we're going to talk across the whole transaction life cycle about how properties can be bought and sold faster and better. And at that point, I'm going to hand over to John Abbott, Director of Digital at the Land Registry, to tell you a bit about Digital Street and its impact on planning.
Thank you. Okie dokie. So, hi everybody. My name's John Abbott. I'm the Director of Digital Data and Land and Technology at Land Registry. So our ambition is to be the best land registry in the world, so we're nothing if not ambitious. And as part of that, we're going through a fairly significant digital transformation process. So today, inside Land Registry, we'll process 120,000 pieces of work, 100,000 searches of the Land Register, and 20,000 updates to the Land Register. Those 20,000 updates to the Land Register will all come into us via a PDF, and about 4,000 of them will go straight back to a conveyancer because there's some kind of mistake on them or some sort of error. And what we're looking to do is to transform our organisation that's been around for 150 years and has evolved from a paper-based process into an electronic process into something that's natively digital, a land registry that's sort of fit for the 21st century. And so as part of that digital transformation programme, we're doing lots of work with startups and lots of open innovation work that we'll come on to later on, in particular talking through and showing you a demo of a project we've been running called Digital Street. Sticking on planning just for 2 seconds, I also wanted to highlight the work of some of my colleagues at the Ministry for Houses, Communities and Local Government. The Digital Land team are looking at how we can make more data available across the market to enable people to build more homes and so on. So check out their GitHub, which you can search for, but if you're interested in meeting them in person, Paul Maltby, the Chief Digital Officer at Ministry for Houses, Communities and Local Government, probably the longest title in the whole of government, I'll just call them MHCLG from now on, are talking on a roundtable at 3:30 this afternoon. So if you want to spend time with the guys talking to them in depth, that's the place to go. They're doing things like creating a single register of planning data. They've got a project that's making all information about national planning policy available online in a single place. And they're also funding a number of different projects that are looking at how you can improve the planning process. So working with collaborators from outside government, thinking about how we can make data about planning more accessible and available and the whole process become slightly more automated. So name check for the guys at MHCLG. If you want to spend more time, go and talk to them this afternoon.
Awesome.
Alex.
So I think, as John says, the key part is collaboration. So I'm head of Geovation. It's an initiative of Ordnance Survey, and we are partnered up with the Land Registry on creating and supporting the broader ecosystem of startups and businesses that want to work with Land Registry, Ordnance Survey, MHCLG, other government bodies to really understand how we can build this stuff together. We are acutely aware that this frictionless world we're moving into is moving at a pace and at a cadence that's completely contrary to our government departments. The work that John does at Land Reg is trying to put that more into synchronization so that things that are being brought through from the private sector can more quickly be adopted within government, within process, and that we know what's going on and we can work with small companies who need us to respond quickly. So Geovation, what we do is we provide, if you like, a membrane, a place for small businesses and startups to engage directly with these government bodies and agencies. I say we started in 2009. We opened our first facility in 2015. Since then, we have helped our companies go on to raise around £23 million of funding from early stage investors. We issue grants to startups on our programs. And it's been a really impactful initiative, I think, partnering up with Land Registry 2 years ago has let us really expand from our work we've done in land into a much more meaningful prop tech initiative. So I'd urge anyone who has a prop tech startup and is looking for engaged support, importantly, at the very early stage. We work from inception through to pre-seed and on to seed funding. If you've already raised more than £1 million, we'd love to talk to you to collaborate with us, but we probably can't help you as actively. Our speciality is getting people from 0 to 30 miles an hour, to getting you up to that point you can get seed funded and grow. And I think what we've learned over the past few years is, again, this ecosystem collaboration is key. And what we've found is a bunch of our companies have come to us and gone, you've got great information about land and property, great information about geospatial data, location analytics, these things that are driving value. But there's other parts of that value chain we can work with. And one of the key ones for us has been the legal tech side of things. How do you take the transactional elements of that? We saw 2 or 3 companies come through us and go, actually, we want to go on this other program that our colleagues at Michigan Dare are running, who can actually fill out that. And because we're public sector, we don't have to be precious and go, they're one of our companies. We want them to succeed. So I'm going to hand over to Nick to a little bit about MDR Lab and how that's kind of tied in with what we do.
Thank you. So MDR Lab is Mishcon's incubator. It's focused on technology startups in the legal space. And at its core, it's very much like any other incubator. We obviously help startups grow their businesses, grow their ideas. And to do that, we provide business and commercial know-how, subject matter expertise, some free office space and coffee, obviously. And we don't have a lot of time today to go into a lot of detail on what we do, so I just wanted to cover 2 main areas, which was why would a startup want to join an incubator, whether it be MDR Lab or another one, and why we love having startups through our doors. So we love having startups through our doors because it gives us access to new technology. It allows our lawyers and our employees to really engage with the awesome, dynamic people that make up startups. And more on that in a second. And lastly, it really enables us to drive business change in our organization. So the business change piece for me is probably the most important part of the lab. The impact that the lab has had on how we work, how our lawyers think about technology, is so important. It's been a massive, massive change. And as our real estate technology specialist, I've seen firsthand how our lawyers are now approaching technology, the way they're able to step back and think about doing their work in a different way. And from our perspective as well, the pilots that we run now with new technologies just work so much better than they used to work, especially with MDR Lab companies. But people are more engaged, and I think they feel that they've had a real meaningful part of that startup's journey. So there are then sort of 3 main reasons why I think a startup would want to join an incubator. There's meaningful engagement from the user group that's going to use their software. They can really drill down into the business problems that are going to be solved or that they hope to solve. There's really understanding the law firm or the other business that they're going to be selling to. Who holds the purse strings? Who do they have to impress in order to get through the door? And lastly, it's a safe environment for them to test their product. They don't have to be afraid that a mistake here or a mistake there will impact their sales cycle. Our program's really intense. It's intense for a reason. We think that it drives interactions between the startups and our employees, and that builds on long-term relationships. And so for me, I think the collaboration between us and Geovation or startups is so important. It cannot be underestimated. It's building product around really well-understood business problems. And I think it's really, really important that all of us, if you've got the opportunity to launch an incubator or you want to, that you think about giving back to the startup community and building the products and startups of the future. And together, as Alex said, we've done a lot of work with a number of startups, and we're going to do a quick 1-minute elevator pitch, or attempt at it anyway, for them over the next 5 or so minutes. So
Cool.
Alex is
Yeah, so I
starting.
think that's a really good point. And just to echo what Nick was saying about MDR Lab, we also find the same thing, that if you want to work with startups, if any corporates in the environment, it's an amazing way to start to shift your cultural thinking of the organization. And I do believe that these small businesses are the ones who are challenging us daily as to what is the appropriate way to work. They have no legacy, they've got no background thinking about what the right way of doing things. They're looking for the optimal way to deliver now in the market. So I think that's why we have this really excited to work with them. So we thought rather than talk too much about us, we'll talk about 5 businesses very, very quickly as examples of what you can achieve when you work with us. So we're going to start off with one which, is anyone from Land Insight in the room? No, not today?
Yes,
oh,
one
yes.
over
Hello.
there.
One at the back. Well done. So Land Insight, you may know, they're one of the UK's fastest growing prop tech companies. We've been working with them at Geovation since inception, and they've also been supported by Pi Labs. It's a really good example of a business that actually took a while to get to where it needed to be. I mean, it was a really challenging period. It's a sales-driven business, driving into the marketplace, and we were able to support Johnny, Andrew, and the team at Land Insight with the environment, not only to test with our data, and they were on early Ordnance Survey data partners and Land Registry partners, but actually give them the environment to grow and scale their business. They're now diversity champions. They're giving huge amounts back to the community, and they are a really good example of how just focusing relentlessly on customer experience, delivering excellent customer experience. We've spoken to several other potential customers and competitors, and the people always say about Land Insight is they are so attentive to customer. That's always been their driving value. And I really think that's helped a lot by just having the space to relentlessly focus on that over their first year. Orbital Witness.
So yeah, Orbital Witness are a prop tech meets legal tech startup offering property professionals an assessment of legal risk associated with real estate, and they're building their product at the moment. And they're moving beyond providing raw data to those property professionals and starting to use artificial intelligence and machine learning to extract and analyze information that sits on property registers to give meaningful insight to people at a much earlier stage in the transaction, to flag material issues much earlier on in the transaction so that it helps smooth the transaction process. And they've recently received a grant from Innovate UK for about £500,000 to focus on building that AI-driven product. They're backed by some of the guys sitting just outside the door there, so JLL Spark, advised by Concrete VC, Life Ventures and CCAMP. They're used by some of the leading law firms, obviously including Mishcon, and they're also now starting to sell to other property professionals. So they're used by M&S in their property team to start to understand their own retail assets. And I think it's a really great example of a collaboration between Geovation, government, using publicly available data, satellite startup, scientists and subject matter expertise and government funding to just build this really amazing product that could go anywhere.
Yeah. Awesome. So third up, we've got Urban Intelligence. Urban Intel, we're another company that came through our Geovation incubation platform. Another example of a business that takes time to get where it needs to go. So Dan Mohammed, who is the founder, has been on a journey the past 3-4 years, and he's got to a point now he's just launched a new product in the marketplace, and it takes time to get there. What they're doing now is real-time appraisal at scale, effectively taking public data, analyzing that, and being able to provide large-scale property companies and property owners with immediate large-scale appraisal value of the development potential of their portfolio. That's not where they started. They started with a very GIS, Geographic Information Systems platform of here's a map of all the planning environment. Very cool. You could see London's entire planning supplementary guidelines in a visual way, overlay data. But he realized quite quickly that actually that's not going to be the solution. Back to our talk earlier, you don't want the drill, you want a hole in the wall. And what Dan's work on is actually the hole in the wall is, I'm a big developer, I want to know, give me the appraised value of my portfolio now, and then track it over time. So it's a good example, again, of working together over a period of time, and he has worked very extensively with the local authorities, with the planning authorities, really drilling into why can I not get the data I want when I want it. And as part of the public sector, we could then really advocate on his behalf to make sure that we gave him the right to get the right data, and particularly open data, into the right format for him to work with.
Okay, so next is Third For. They're a great example of a collaboration between us two. They went through MDR Lab at the same time they were in Geovation. They really drew on Geovation's development expertise, and they used their team to build their MVP throughout the whole of MDR Lab. So when it came to Demo Day, they had this fantastic MVP that they could demo to everyone at Demo Day. And they were building their MVP with the developers at Geovation at the same time as they were learning about how legal onboarding works, how legal payments work. And so I just think that's a sort of a unique opportunity for some startups to start to do something like that. And so they're an FCA regulated business. They're backed by Mishcon, Alex Chesterman from Zoopla. All the work that Geovation did means that Geovation are an option holder behind their other shareholders. They're about providing cutting-edge tools to property professionals to do their onboarding in a completely new and streamlined way. So they use AI to check that copies of passports are accurate and real. They gather information from lots of other sources to check address data. They're using the new open banking rules to gather financial data about consumers and to present all of that information, the onboarding and the financial source of funds, to lawyers and other property professionals to give them a really great understanding of who their client is. And I think the important thing about it, coming back to what we were originally talking about, is that there's lots of friction in the real estate transaction process. And all of this, including the stuff that Third For is doing, is providing consumers with a much better experience than the ones that they get currently. It allows them to streamline the process of being onboarded by lawyers. And it saves countless hours of time for all the property professionals using this tool.
So last up, we've got a slightly newer company. So Hipla have been through Geovation, and they're now moving on to MDR Lab. So Hipla are trying to solve this challenge we've had for a long time, which is how do we bring more information about buyer status into the process. The famous agent thinks buyers are liars is a phrase that Adam's used before now, and it's a really interesting dynamic. We know we're still in a vendor-focused environment rather than a buyer-focused environment, and yet it's very strange that market dynamic still exists. So looking at how can you improve buyer position, how can you evidence where you are, and more interestingly now, how can you create sort of pseudo-reservation agreements around your position so you can, again, reduce that breakdown of trust in the chain. I've just transacted on property the last month and a half. I spent 6 months going back and forth with all kinds of fun stuff, but it puts you in an incredible place of stress when you're trying to transact and you have, unfortunately, a system not like in Scotland where until we exchange contracts, you're seriously exposed. So the work that Adam's doing is really valuable in hopefully improving the markets, reducing friction in the marketplace and getting people to transact faster and more securely.
Yeah.
Conscious of time, so we're going to crack on very quickly. Most importantly, why and how we do this is to inform our stakeholders. Like the reason that MDR do it is to inform their legal colleagues about how they can be a better law firm. And the key drive for Geovation is how do we help John and his colleagues, my colleagues at Ordnance Survey, deliver better outcomes. So John, talk a little about Digital Street, about how this has informed your work.
Yeah, so as the guys have described, we work pretty closely with startups, but we also work with a really broad community on a research and development project called Digital Street. So this is an open innovation project that invites anybody to be involved. It's completely free to join, and you can choose to be an observer if you just want to come along and be part of the project and participate in a relatively passive way, or you can get all the way in and start writing code and start building prototypes along with other folks from across the industry. Our objective in getting and leading a research and development project is to make sure that we collectively understand what the future for land and property buying and selling is going to look like. So sort of timescale-wise, we're thinking 2030, maybe a bit sooner than that, late 20s if you like. And our kind of rationale is the best thing to do is to invent the future rather than to kind of wait for it to come and grab hold of you. So all of the slides that we talked about earlier on, Digital Street's an opportunity for us collectively as a market to go ahead and start to invent the future. It's really important that we start with user research, so we start with needs. And as Alex was describing, buying and selling land and property in the UK, certainly in the residential sector, is about as stressful as getting divorced. So that feels like a nice big problem to solve. When we get everybody from across the industry together and we say, how well are we doing collectively? we kind of say we give ourselves a bit of a thumbs down if we're honest. We can't really think of another industry that all gets together and has a conference and says we're collectively not doing a good enough job. But maybe the train companies probably have those sorts of difficult conferences, but maybe they're alone. So yeah, the other important bit is open innovation. So everything that we do in Digital Street, we publish, talk about openly. There's no kind of commercial in confidence. All the code is open source. And if you're not already involved, you're more than welcome to come and join us. One of the things that we've just done in the last month was look at the process of buying and selling houses, and in particular, the process of a residential property transaction, and looking at how we can make that process more straightforward. So this diagram depicts that. So on the left-hand side, you see a better, richer set of information about a property. So kind of put, in short, everything you might want to know about a property but were afraid to ask. So imagine a digital property record. Imagine that digital property record is associated with the owner's identity, and that identity is stored digitally. Imagine that you can then transfer that property from one person to another on top of or sort of automatically using a natively digital process, using something called smart contracts. Imagine that you can automate the movement of funds. So when I draw down my mortgage, it's automatically paid to the person that I bought the property from. Imagine that I can automatically have stamp duty paid, and for us, importantly, that the land register can automatically be updated. So we'll walk through that in just a second, but before we do that, I wanted to describe some of the partners that we worked with. Like I said, there's 250 different organisations in Digital Street interacting with us to a greater or lesser extent, depending on their preference. But in the last month, we went through and did a real-life property transaction with some real-life people and some real-life companies, so banks, Mishcon, and so on. So we took a property in Gillingham in Kent, and we did an entirely digital transfer of it from a buyer to a seller. To show you that, so I'll first of all show you the demo, and then I'll show you a picture of all the happy people that bought and sold a house in just a moment. So we're going to start off with the property record. So this is everything you want to know about the property. You can see that it's owned by a woman called Lisa, and there's a bunch of information about it. The seller's solicitor now logs in to their system, so their own system, and then accesses the blockchain where that title is stored. They request that from Land Registry. I need to put this down because if I click it, the video will stop, and there's probably a danger that I do that. So the title's been transferred across to the solicitor with all of the information associated with the property, natively, digitally, inside their existing casework system. They're then going to ask, because they're selling the property, they're going to ask the bank to agree upfront to discharging the mortgage. So the idea is that you do all this pre-prep work so that when it comes to exchanging and completing, things just happen sort of automatically through magic and technology. So NatWest log into their system, and they agree, they could automate this, but in this case, we're using a human to do it, they could agree to discharge a property. So this is the demo version. Like I say, we did this for real, and I'll show you a picture of that in just a second. So you can see that's being updated. So everybody's system is talking to a blockchain, so everyone's seeing the same version of the data at the same time. So as the bank authorizes the discharge, the seller's conveyancer is able to see that on their system and then go ahead and configure their smart contract. So they're configuring all the details of the contract. They're doing that sort of in human readable English, and that's then converted into executable code that you'll see run in just a moment. That then goes across to Mishcon, who are representing the buyer, and Sam at Mishcon logs into their casework system. Again, their casework system's tied into the same shared database, this blockchain, and they can see everything about the property as well. The person's buying it with a mortgage, so they're going to add a new mortgage, again, kind of up front into the process. Check the sales agreement that was sent to them by the seller's conveyancer. They're going to agree with that, so presumably they might disagree. We built in the opportunity for people to negotiate around the contract, but in this more straightforward example, we haven't included it. The seller then gets a text message and they log in and verify themselves. So first of all, they do some sort of light registration to verify themselves with an identity provider called Yoti, and that allows them to go ahead and see their contract. So they put their PIN number in, or see the agreement, I should say. So they can click through that, review that, check the boxes, and then go ahead and sign it. So when they come to sign it, so they use their PIN number to see the data. When they come to sign it, they need to do a greater level of authentication. So we ask them to go ahead and do take a selfie video. So we're checking that Lauren's face is the same face that was checked against her passport when she first signed up for Yoti. Also checking that she's alive, and that somebody's not buying a house in her name after she died. And hey presto, so she's gone ahead and signed her contract to buy a house. The same contract, sorry, Lauren was the seller, I beg your pardon. The same contract goes to the buyer, who again follows the same process. So they use their PIN number, so relatively light authentication to see the contract, review it, they know that it's sent to them and has already been reviewed by their solicitor, so their sort of expert advisor, if you like. Click continue. And here they're not just signing the contract, but they're also agreeing to things like paying their stamp duty, signing up to a new mortgage, setting themselves up for 30 years worth of pain and misery perhaps, but we don't know. And then they go ahead and do the same thing, so take a selfie diagram, take a selfie picture to go ahead and sign all of their documents. So that's neat. So it's quite cool that you can sign a contract taking a selfie video. We think that's certainly easier, certainly more secure than the current process. But what's really neat is that those contracts, like I mentioned earlier on, they're all natively digital and they've got code written inside them, and that code will automatically execute now they've been signed, in this case, on completion day. So on completion day, everything just kind of happens by magic. So the new mortgage is drawn down, the old mortgage is paid off, the funds are transferred, any remaining funds are transferred where they need to, the stamp duty is paid, and so on and so forth. Just automatically, no faxes, no hassles, no phone calls, no bank charges, etc. And then finally, the register's updated, and you can see just in this last picture that the property's been updated, and David Jones, the new buyer, is the person that now owns the property. So that was the demo that we did, that kind of with sort of fake data, if you like. But we went ahead and did that for real. So these are some folks from Land Registry, some folks from Yoti, the solicitors, the buyer, the seller, and people were doing this. So the buyer and seller, was it the buyer or the seller that was in Spain? So Yoti were in Spain, the buyer was somewhere, the seller was somewhere else. We were all over the place, but transacting on a property, all at the same time. You didn't have to all jump on a video conference to do that, but we just wanted to do it because it was the first time we'd ever done it. And so it was a really straightforward process, and the seller loved it. So it's a far more straightforward process than the one that he was used to or had gone through previously. So, in summary, what we're talking about here is how you go ahead and collaborate with the market. It's really important that, for us at least as organisations, that we interact with startups because they're right at the edge of innovation, looking to solve problems in new and exciting ways, with, as Alex says, with fresh thinking, without the legacy or particular business model that perhaps some of us that have been around for a little bit longer might have. We think it's really important that collaboration focuses around known problems, so things that are as painful as getting divorced are good, big, known problems. And so if you're interested in working with us on some of those challenges, either learning a bit more about how we work with startups or joining the Digital Street community, or both, then go and come and have a conversation with us afterwards. Or we've also got a stand in the middle of the floor that's big and orange and says Geovation on it, so you probably can't miss it. So go and have a conversation there, and you probably get a better demo than the one that I've just done as well, if you want to. Thanks very much. That was us, just talking to you guys about open collaboration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.